We will soon start this meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I call this work session of April 5th, 2023 to order. The time is 4:08 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence electronic devices. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Trustee Williams, can you please lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Brooks will make the motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Reference material is provided for item 2.01, board committees, and reference material is provided for item 2.03, community conversations update presentation. I also move item 2.03 to immediately follow adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and by a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. We also have two colleagues calling in, Trustee Zamora and Trustee Guzman. Trustee Zamora?
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Okay. All right, colleagues, before I open 2.03, is there anyone who has, in the audience, who has not had a moment to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. Okay. Forgive me, this is not an action item. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Rafalski. Welcome, Dr. Rafalski.
Good afternoon, President Garcia Morales, trustees, Dr. Jara, Shauna Rafalski for the record. Here this afternoon to just share with you some of the information that we received. As you know, we hosted 4 community conversations in each of the 3 regions last week, in addition to a Saturday meeting. I want to thank each of you for being part of these meetings. So we shared with the community some of our objectives for the meetings. We utilized strategies that we found to be successful in the past and didn't exactly know what to expect when we sent out the invitations through social media, daily in whole and in parts for each of the meetings. Parent links, we sent out parent links to all of our community in the 2 Fridays leading up to the event. We added the information to our district website, and we did a press release and subsequently also added the Saturday meeting. In addition to the objectives that we had, facilitation was very solution-oriented for our meetings, with all voices being valued and open-ended enough to allow for authentic interaction. So in addition to our original objectives, we were also able to see some other benefits from the meetings, and we were able to do the following. We were able to share with the community some understanding of the complexity of the budget process and share restrictions to certain funding. To clarify potential misunderstandings about where our money is spent and how it's spent. We were able to listen to a variety of diverse perspectives on the potential for future CCSD, the future of CCSD, and leverage all information. Every word from every meeting was captured and categorized so that we could share with you some of the anecdotal data this afternoon. And we'll also be able to use it as we start the strategic planning process. We also, the community was able to not only share information, but listen to the perspectives of others and provided an interactive opportunity not only to meet and speak with you all, but also with the superintendent and district staff. The group makeup was quite diverse, with members of the community, parents, employees, and even students. That was one of the things that was was most exciting, that there was an entry point for everyone. We did provide translation services, and interpreters were provided to also eliminate that barrier. The presentation, each of the days was split up into 3 and really 4 sections. So we got some input to level set on our phrase, "We are CCSD," to get perceptions and thoughts and feelings. Dr. Jara shared information and provided context into our budget and how that all works. We asked our community to create a projected future vision, their hopes and dreams for CCSD. And then finally, we asked them to prioritize in rank order of importance what they found that they valued most after they received a foundation of information. Created a word cloud with all of the information. When asked about the phrase, what "We are CCSD" meant to them, you can see loud and clear. Students came up as the most, came up the most, and it really is at the center of not only what we do, but what our parents value. After the presentation, groups shared their future vision for CCSD and provided such valuable insight into our community's values, and all of those graphics were consolidated down into some common themes, and so all of that information, really does kind of show us where our community, how they value what we do. This was the ultimate goal of the whole presentation. We finished after people had received all that foundational information, and they were asked to rank order the priorities. We limited priorities to those things that we have some choice over. We did not include things like increases in utilities costs, because that's not something that we really have a choice over, and our community was offered the opportunity if there were other priorities that they wanted to provide insight into. The priorities are ranked, just for your reference, by how many times a particular item was ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. And so you can see, just as an example, personnel cost of living increases was ranked number 1 8 times. And one-to-one technology equipment, for example, was ranked in the number 1 slot 1 time. From there, I'll take questions and comments, turn it over to the superintendent, but I think we'll probably want to stick on the rank order, because that was really the ultimate purpose of the meetings.
Thank you, Dr. Rafalski. Dr. Jara?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you, Dr. Rafalski, for the brief update. I do want to just level set here the conversation. I think when you see the priorities that the community has are very similar to where we are. Just want to let you know where we are in the process. As we mentioned, April 13th, you are going to be presented a tentative budget. So we're still working through the process, and then in May, you'll have the opportunity to bring in one more time, the final, you'll have another opportunity to bring in the budget. So it's by law, we have to have the tentative presented and then comes back in May. Just so you know, we started our bargaining with our organization, CCEA. We have next week ESCA and all our bargaining units. So that is a priority, obviously, as for me and for all of us, for you, I know as well, is the staffing need. So just wanted to put everybody and give some context, but then also what I heard, and I think I love the conversation we had, the community, and I think there's more that needs to happen, because what we heard is what we already know, is that the $2 billion is historic for the state, but as you heard loud and clear, in some cases, not enough to get to service our children and the needs that we have in this community for our schools, because of the lack of funding in K-12 education from the state. So just wanted to make sure that there's more that we need to continue doing. So I appreciate the board's direction in giving my staff and me to really go out into this community. It was eye-opening and something that we need to continue doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. I see a couple of colleagues in the queue already. However, I want to jump in here and share my deep appreciation to Dr. Jara and his staff for doing this work. It took a lot of hours and planning. There were even decorations. Everything was planned and organized, and so incredibly grateful, especially grateful to our colleagues, to every member, members who attended, all members attended various events, and I'm so grateful that you took time out of your evening and weekends to participate, and certainly especially appreciative of the individuals who participated in these events. There is a need to do more. I think from the board's perspective, we have talked about more community meetings. These were very fruitful and provided a lot of insight that would help us build on an already successful event to continue being successful in our efforts to engage our community and share both the great things that are happening in our school district and some of the challenges as well. So I am going to start with Trustee Zamora, who has her hand raised, and then I'll move on to Trustee Williams. Trustee Zamora?
Hello, all. Thank you, Dr. Rafalski, for putting all this together. I really appreciate it. I just have a quick question right now. Did you receive any feedback about your CCSD meetings from the attendees? And if so, was there anything that was common, or what was a big thing for them?
Would you repeat the first part of that question, Trustee Zamora?
If you received any feedback from attendees?
So overwhelming, many people who came in, it wasn't necessarily what they expected. We heard over and over and over again that how much people appreciated the opportunity to interact with staff and with the trustees. And we kept hearing, we need more of these. There were also comments in many cases that were placed on the back of the cards. So we did cards for sign-in. And there were a lot of comments about people wanting more.
Can I do a follow-up, President Garcia Morales?
Go ahead, Trustee Zamora.
Is there any space to possibly also add a Q&A at the end of presentations?
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that insight. Certainly when we're planning for the next event, we will take that into consideration depending on the format of the event. Any other thoughts, Trustee Zamora?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Rafalski, for doing this, and Superintendent Jara, and like your entire staff. There's a whole bunch of them there. I only got to go to one of these. My daughter tagged along. I made her. She made me go, but I'm just kidding. I actually only have a few questions. I know that a big portion of this was motivated and kind of spurred by the $2 billion that Governor Lombardo had kind of announced that he was going to give to education. My question, I guess, would be, are you planning on, aside from, this one particular event, are you going to do these more often? I'm not saying like all the time, but maybe annually as the budgets are getting assigned. I think annually is a pretty fair assessment, and it gives community, again, that educational aspect as to where our money goes and how much it costs to run this school district.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Dr. Jara?
Thank you, Superintendent Jar, for the record. Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Williams, I think the need was there, and really the community was hungry for more, right? Sure. And one of the things that I really appreciated was a lot of folks that we haven't really seen, which was really encouraging. There's other things that we want to bring forward to the community. For example, transportation. There's different things, bell times. There's a lot of different things that I'm going to have conversations with the president, so we can strategize. And I think it would be important for the community to provide input to some of the things that we're doing. So yes.
Okay, I agree. Thank you. I thank you for that. I absolutely agree. I think that these were really needed. As you see, there was one exercise that you guys did. It says like split the dollar, figure out where our money goes. And I think that gave such a good insight to how much money goes into this district, and that it's not super overinflated like everybody seems to perceive it as. A couple questions that I had, if it's all right with the president. One is, I know that this information is going to be public. The bargaining units are going to have access to it, so they'll be able to see this. My fear, I guess not a question, but my fear is, As you can see, the first two ranked items are personal cost of living and personal step increases. This is a school district, and we're always focused on student outcomes. And down at curriculum, one-to-one technology, safety, school choice and transportation, those are the bottom ranked items, but they affect our students the most. So my fear is that given this information is public and it's going to go right to the bargaining units, they're going to see this as almost ammo to kind of say, like, look, the community wants us to have more money, and don't get me wrong, our teachers do a lot of work, our administrators do a lot of work, our police services do a lot of work. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get that, but my fear is, and I'm not sure if I'm actually adjusting this properly or articulating it properly, but this is going to be used as the motivation to bring us consistently back to the bargaining table, to the negotiating table, when we really should be focused on student outcomes. So how are you guys, formulating to combat that?
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Dr. Jara?
Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Williams, that is a great problem to have. And I'll say this because, yes, you're right. And I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have. Our employees, our compensation for all our employees needs to be addressed,
Sure.
right? And I think what we learned is that the $2 billion, as historic as it is necessarily not enough to address the needs that this community and these children have. So when we think about what our community is asking for and saying, yeah, those are our priorities, but we have curriculum needs, right? I mean, and the cliff of the ESSER, when that goes away, needs to be addressed as well. So the ongoing discussion is members of the legislature and members that are in Carson City need to hear from our community. So I think how we work with our parents, our community leaders, our bargaining units to address the needs, ultimately to address the student needs that we have in our classrooms, in our schools. So I see it as a potential positive.
Right.
So folks understand the lack of funding that we've received for 20 years, what the needs are.
Right. I agree. Thank you, Dr. Jara. I just want it to be seen that, like, when ESSER goes away, there's a lot of programs that were formulated under ESSER that may also go away because of funding, and that's unfortunate because it hurts our kids. But also, I think the last thing was mandatory recess. I don't know. Those were on so many. I'm just saying.
Sounds like a very special request. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Great insight. Appreciate your thoughts. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. And again, as my colleague stated, thank you to the staff and superintendent for holding these community meetings. So Trustee Zamora already asked one of my questions, and that was, having to do with the structure, possibly going forward, whether we'd be able to fit in, depending on the topic we're doing and the format, if we would be able to fit in a little bit more interactional that are not just focused on, like, the table projects, which I thought were great and participated in. And I think they had a lot of fun doing that, and it gave them some structure, like a jumping off point. But do you anticipate, and I know this might be too early to ask this, so I apologize, do you anticipate with some of the other topics that were brought up that our president allowed us to do at the last work session, that we would have like a similar structure? Or is that something you guys are still like looking at, or too soon, or?
I will jump in briefly.
Sure.
And Dr. Dar, if you have additional insight, that is up for consideration. Certainly, if you have any ideas or suggestions, happy to hear them. Dr. Dara? That's it? Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Okay, thank you, because I know that this was just, this was one that was very much on the minds of everyone, and they had a lot of questions about that. And I think that with, some of the recent meetings that the legislature is asking for, that this was a good time to have these and to have the community be able to give their input on that. So on the other thing, this is kind of a confirmation question. It's from one of the constituents that had looked at the reference material. So on the ranking input and on the priorities, this is the total number, and that's when everybody was going around picking up all the things from the table, right? And as far as like our, what were they, like the little rectangles that we had that were numbered? So this is the total number from all 4 meetings.
Thank you, thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Dr. Rafalski?
Trustee Cavazos, that's correct.
Okay, all right, because I know that there were some folks that we were trying to, I know the trustees were walking around trying to encourage everyone to take part in every single exercise, not just like one or two. And I think that is all that I had for now, because I think that Trustee Garcia Morales and also Dr. Jar already answered my other ones. But my most important one was hoping for maybe a little bit more interactional question-answer, give and take. Thank you so much, Dr. Rafalski.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. I have a point of clarification. We mentioned the $2 billion that is allocated from the, potentially allocated from the state. I want to be clear that not all $2 billion of those dollars will be coming to CCSD. It is approximately $287 million. Is that right, Dr. Jara? Here we go.
Madam President, members of the board, what you will see next week, and I think when our CFO presents a tentative budget, it's actually around 311 million, if I'm not mistaken from memory. So it's around $300 million that are coming in the first year of the biennium.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Jara, for that clarity. I know we will get more clarity on April 13th and even more clarity once the legislature ends at the beginning of June. Thank you for that. Trustee Bustamante Adams? Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. A ditto on expressing the gratitude for the CCSD leadership, but also for yours as well. Thank you for steering the ship. My question is, I did appreciate the participation. It was phenomenal. I loved the group that I was in. My question is, we heard from the supply side. What about the demand side? And this is what I'm referencing from the business community, because they're going to use our product that we are going to produce, right, which are the students. And they know where the puck is headed. They're the industries coming into the region. Will we have an opportunity to hear from them what they would like to see, the application? Not sure if that's part of the conversation, but just wanted to plant that seed.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Bustamante Adams, a great question, great. Actually, I have our chief of communications and government relations reaching out to both the chambers, LVGEA, some of the business community to really share about where we're headed academically, not so much with the budget. I mean, addressing and sharing some of the budget decisions that we're looking at, but more of the instructional components that we're looking at producing as we're producing the talent of our students into what they are. So it's more of the instructional that we're headed and the support there in that aspect. But some of this budgetary will be shared as well.
And Madam President, if I can add to that, because Trustee Williams' question about there might be from the demand side, right, because that's what we're producing for, they might have different priorities, not saying that the cost of living increase won't come back on top, but they may be thinking otherwise, and that might be a way to counterbalance that. So just food for thought that I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you for those insights, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks to staff. I definitely want to echo the sentiments of my peers. I think that CCSD has gone out on a limb. It's something that this traditionally is not something that we've done. And I appreciate you taking a chance and putting yourself out there. I'm glad to hear some new people showed up. A little bit surprised about the smaller class size not rising to the top because that is a frequent complaint. So I wonder if you have any insight into why that was ranked so low.
The smaller class size was actually listed as one of the other components, and so it did show up quite frequently on the future of CCSD. So for teachers, our community wants high quality, fully staffed, well-compensated teachers with lower class size. That did show up in that particular area.
Thank you, Dr. Rafalski. Dr. Jara?
Madam President, members of the board, Trustee Brooks, I think from what I also saw in Trustee Dr. Rafalski just kind of reminded me, it was tough. You know, when you think about the priorities and really pushing them, obviously, I heard quite often, we need teachers in the classroom, number one. We need staff. You know, so they're using, my thinking is some of these increases was really to bring in staff. And not that it's not important, but it was just really to having a classroom educator. And one of the things that, and I know the president and I had a conversation, you know, why do we investing in Chromebooks when we don't have teachers, right? I mean, and I think the community was having a tough time in making some of these, because they said a lot of, what I also heard is all of these are important, right? And I think that's the piece, that all of them are really important, and it was really tough for them to make some of those decisions. And I said, now you know how tough our job is, so.
Thank you for that. And then some of the insights that I gleaned from watching, to Trustee Williams's point, there were some things that were maybe some easy wins that the district could build in they're not necessarily costly. They just require us to reframe our way of thinking or think a little bit differently about education. So did you notice any of those trends, and is there an opportunity moving forward to build in some sort of feedback loop so that we're not just prioritizing things that cost money, but we're just prioritizing also things that we could just do better?
Trustee Brooks, Shauna Rafalski for the record. Actually, there were things that kind of bubbled up. Some that cost money and others that don't. People want to be valued. And there was a lot of conversation about respect for students and students' respect for their teachers. That came up a lot. Access to resources. I think that there's an area that we can reflect on as far as making sure that things are accessible. Mental health came up often, about us really making sure we double down on some of that. Active, integrated community support. They really talked a lot about a sense of community, and so I think that we have some control over that. Parent engagement came up, and there was a lot of conversation about parents and students wanting more of things like the arts and extracurricular activities and languages. There was a lot of conversation about expanding language opportunities, dual language, in addition to food quality and perhaps expediting the fingerprint process.
Thank you. I appreciate you elaborating that, and I look forward to growing on this, building on this. I don't even know what I'm building on it.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Perfect. Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, I leave you in great hands with my chief of staff and my deputy. I'm catching a flight to get to Carson City, flying out, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you.
Safe travels, Dr. Jara. Thank you. Trustee Williams, forgive me, Trustee Williams, before we move on to you, I want to give Trustee Guzman a chance to weigh in. Trustee Guzman, do you have any questions at this moment in time?
I do, thank you. Sorry. I have just a couple of questions. First, when we determine sites, I'd like to see us come down south. In my area, my community has been very loud and very clear with me on that. The second thing, I want to thank everyone who came out to those meetings. I went to 2 of them, and they were so interactive. They allowed the parents to talk to each other, and even the students that showed up to talk to each other and discuss some of the things that are happening in our district. I appreciated the fact that Dr. Jara went through the ESSER funds, because that seems to be a misnomer to our community, and he laid it out very clearly. And taking a look forward, I did like how folks prioritize things. Obviously, I think an educator's working conditions is a student's learning condition. So I feel like that's very critical. My question has to be, because these were, I was only able to see the ones that were during the week. Can you tell me, was there more of an appetite to have a Saturday community meeting than during the week? That's my number one question.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. In terms of attendance, you mean? Was the Saturday attendance greater than perhaps some of the weekday ones?
That's correct.
Dr. Rafalski?
Trustee Guzman, Shauna Rafalski for the record. The attendance was pretty well spread across the week. It varied slightly, but people who came to the Saturday session did appreciate that we had the opportunity that was added.
So the attendance was not more or less, it was all the same, no matter which day we held the community meeting. Is that what I hear you say?
Trustee Guzman, that's correct.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And then some of the priorities, do they overlap? Was it difficult to put a 1, 2, or was it something that was very clear, this is what the community wants?
Trustee Guzman, Shauna Rafalski for the record. It was very clear because each of the groups had to solidify their choices, and they had to mark number 1, number 2. So any of the data is just anecdotal. It was just copied directly from what the groups put. There were a couple of instances where a group potentially could not choose, and so there was one instance, there was a 1A and a 1B. But other than that, they were very clear with their priorities.
Great, that's exactly what I was curious about. Thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your hard work. I just, as someone who presents for a living, I was very impressed with the interaction of the community members. So thank you so very much.
Thank you for that feedback, Trustee Guzman, and insight, and certainly your thoughts around workshop in the future, future sessions potentially being in your district or region or south are well taken. Thank you for that. Trustee Williams, you are next in the queue.
I just have another question, but did you want to go first because you haven't gone yet? Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Rafalski, sorry. I like the times that you did, and Trustee Guzman mentioning, going down to Henderson, which is the majority of her area, made me think of obviously Moapa and Logandale and Indian Springs and all these other, Laughlin, Boulder City, like these other. I would like to point out, I want the board to be very careful about saying the community wants this, because I looked at the attendance, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was probably, as far as members that showed, anywhere from 10 to about 40 on any given day. And so I want to be careful, because there's 2.3 or 4 million people that live in Clark County. I don't think 160 people fairly represent Clark County. So I would just like to make that point. But my question was, do you have the attendance of how many people actually came?
Trustee Williams, we do have the attendance of people who came and did fill out cards. In some cases, one card was filled out for a family.
Oh, okay.
In some other cases, people returned.
Sure.
We did have staff, but we do have
Okay.
the number of cards, which doesn't necessarily
Right.
reflect total number.
Right, and I think that's why I want to be careful. Where you're actually just referring to as the groups. Sometimes the board members, we tend to say the community, but I want us to be very aware that 160 people at best do not represent 2.4 million people that live in Clark County. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. I'm going to go to Trustee Cavazos and then Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I just forgot something earlier, Dr. Vafalski, that I just wanted to share, and that was on if you look at, let's see, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth item down the category, school choice and transportation. I attended 2 meetings, one at Chaparral on 27th, and then the Saturday meeting. I have to agree with you. It's kind of like, pretty much like spread out between the weekday and the Saturday, although some people did express appreciation for Saturday. There was some confusion I found in the 2 or 3 groups that I kind of participated in, that they didn't really know. They asked me, what are we talking about as far as school choice and transportation? Like, are we talking about school choice like our magnet schools? Are we talking about school choice like the governor talking about opportunity scholarships or vouchers? And so I just wanted to share that with you, that there was some confusion on that and the connection to transportation. So I did try to explain as best I could. Thank you. That's all that I had.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. That leads perfectly into my comments, which, this first series of workshops was meant to inform the community, and that's great feedback that we all received and collected from a group of people who attended these sessions. This is, in order to inform the public about, again, the work of the district, and there's more work to do. I mean, this is our first session, and a lot of effort and energy was put into them. But again, when we first talked about community engagement opportunities, we talked about the importance of informing the community. And if members of the community are coming to ask us about choice, of course, we are talking about our magnet programs and schools where students can attend that are not their neighborhood schools. So, we don't have any jurisdiction over school choice programming through vouchers or anything like that. We are. And of course, our charter schools that are also considered a choice in our school district. So excited about the work that we will continue to do to inform our community about the school district. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Dr. Rafalski, for this work, and look forward to stay tuned for the next series of sessions. Oh, I'm trying to close this out, but Trustee Zamora had her hand raised, and I have her note here. Trustee Zamora, bring us home.
I just had more positive things to say. I really want to thank the staff, just because I did end up taking my child to one of the sessions as well. And she was actually sharing with me that she went to school and shared, that she attended the CCSD, and she thought the money portion of it, the activity we did, was a lot of fun, because she understood that things are not how it is. And this is a 4th grader. So I really am grateful that we have this ball rolling. There's so much work and there's so much feedback that I think we should take in. But thank you to the staff, because we're going a great direction.
That's a great way to bring us home. Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Thank you, Dr. Rafalski. You are dismissed. All right, colleagues, we're going to go back and to item 2.01, board committees. Now, this is an action item. I'm going to ask us to pull up the 2.01 presentation. Before we continue to open this item, I want to make sure that if anyone in the public that has not had a chance to complete their public speaker card, please do so now. Okay. All right, colleagues, I'm going to walk us through, this is my presentation around board committees. I brought this item before us for 2 primary reasons. One, we have new members on the board, and I know when I was a new member 2 years ago, the board committee structure was confusing for me, really understanding which committees I had appointees to and which ones were board functions, committee assignments. There's just a lot of terminology and knowledge, and I was hoping that we could ground ourselves in shared knowledge, and 2, really prepare for the May work session, thinking ahead, thinking about an item that I may bring before us in May that will allow us to really dig a little deeper around board committees. So think of this as an appetizer to a meal that we're going to continue to build on together. So who's ever kind of helping me control the slides, can we hit the next one, please? Is that Lisa? Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So the overview, we're going to talk about the objectives for this item, for this particular conversation, the type of committees. Under committees, we're going to talk about the appointment structure, the functions, different types of appointments, and vacancies that currently exist on our committee assignments. And then reflections to help you think about and prepare for the May session. Okay? So we'll start with, next slide, please. We'll start with the definition of a committee. It is an advisory group with limited scope formed to provide recommendations or oversight to the district and board, formed through board action or as a result of NRS. Again, this was something that I learned as a new member, that some board committees were, regulated by statute. Okay, so one of the things that we're hoping to focus, a couple of things that we're hoping to focus on is review the existing board committees, discuss the functions of board committees and the limitations of serving on those committees, discuss the qualifications of committee members, and discuss board committee vacancies, along with plan for May work session agenda items related to committees. I really want to focus on a conversation, discussion of committees that are associated with the board, either through our own direct appointments or through our, whole group appointments that we have to come before the board so that we vote on, right? And I guess to some degree also appointments that I make as president to different committees, but primarily focused on the direct appointments and the whole group appointments that we make. Other things that I'm hoping that we will discuss is that I'm hoping to seek a collaborative solution to help build cohesion in the board and community committees who represent us. And finally, along these lines, I'm hoping that we can really inform the public about the community committees, that currently provide expertise to the board. Okay, so next slide, please. So I've broken down the committees here and appointment structure. Board member, community representative appointments are all in blue on the left-hand side, and appointments outlined in NRS, right? The Sex Education Advisory Committee, Oversight Panel for School Facilities. These are NRS mandated committees that are also open to open meeting law, okay? The ones that are in blue are developed by the board. Yep. Yes, and so the board ones are also subject to open meeting law as well. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide, the committees and their functions. Specifically, this is an overview of the committees. I'll pick a couple here, and I'd love colleagues who currently serve on these. Maybe I'll pick one board-initiated and one NRS-initiated committee to share. So, Trustee Guzman, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay. Could you share insight on the functions of the Bond Oversight Committee?
Sure. I served on that for 2 years, and the point of the Bond Oversight Committee is to review where we are based on the bond that was allocated to us through the legislative session. When we go for a bond, we do a presentation to the legislature and tell them exactly how we're going to utilize the funds. Then it comes back to the district, and when we receive that bond, and we use what we have proposed. We do make amendments to what we've proposed, but we bring it to the Bond Oversight Committee to let them know. We also give them updates. They're able to review who's actually doing the construction. I know when I was on the Bond Oversight Committee, ensuring that we had diverse construction companies working with us was a critical piece to the committee. Also making sure that we were following the calendar, every committee meeting we discussed all the new things that needed to be utilized with those monies. But also, I was there to bring what we discuss as a board forward, give the bond oversight committee where what we're thinking is critical, and they would give me feedback to bring back to the board. One of the many times they asked to have a joint meeting, and we actually did bring them in to have a joint meeting to discuss where we were with the bond. So those are a couple of the things. I mean, it's the bond oversight committee meets once a month, and it is a very labor-intensive committee meeting for the staff. And the folks that we have appointed are extremely committed, and they work through all of the ins and outs of ensuring that we are that we have the best possible information to bring back to the board. I hope that was clear.
Thank you. That was very helpful, and a great reminder that these individuals who serve on these committees are incredible experts in this space and are incredibly committed. So thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Williams, could you share insight on the function of the oversight panel for school facilities?
I have not had a meeting yet. This is actually the first year that I'm serving on this one, so I don't actually have the context that I would need to explain this one. I actually do sit on the bond oversight committee now, so, but Trustee Guzman did a great job of explaining it. So I've had 2 meetings with them. The last one was canceled, and so I have another one coming up next week, I believe, so.
Thank you. Thank you in advance for your service on that end. Certainly excited about your contributions there. I'll point out that when it comes to functions of committees, for example, one thing that I know I was often tripped up on was that the Sex Education Recommending Committee provides, it reviews applications and selects individuals for the Sex Education Advisory Committee. Both the NRS, the Sex Education Advisory Committee is NRS initiated. Trustee Williams?
Sorry.
I was ready for you to jump in. I love it. Okay. So this is a list of all the functions, and I think it's important to recognize that each committee has a specific function that meet the needs of the school district. The Audit Advisory Committee being another of those that advises the board, and we've had joint meetings with them, for example. They help us strengthen our accountability for stewardship of our resources. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, where we talk about committees and appointments. This is also a very text-heavy slide, I recognize, but I wanted you to have as much information on a high level, besides, this information can also be found in our policies, GP 15, GP 15 appendix, and on our website. I think that's it. Okay, those are the 2 main ones. All right, and when it comes to the appointments, who appoints under these committee assignments? Where do the appointments come from? I think is this what this slide really talks about. For example, the Attendance Zone Advisory Committee, each board member appoints 2 members from their district or constituents, right? Individuals who live in your district. When we have, for example, when each of us submits names for these appointments, staff will ask us for these individuals' address to ensure that they live in the district. The School Naming Committee, this very specifically says the superintendent appoints 5 community members and 1 administrative employee, and it provides additional details about who that is. And then the board president selects 2 members of the board. This year, it is Trustee Guzman who's chairing that committee, along with Trustee Bustamante Adams, who serves on the committee as well. Thank you both for your service on that end. So you'll see here again the appointments, who appoints individuals, and and whether they are from Dr. Jara, from members, individual trustees, and or if sometimes these appointments are outside of the board, like the Oversight Panel for School Facilities. There are 6 members who are elected officials that, again, because it's NRS initiated, they're very specific individuals to serve on that committee. I'm going to move on to committees and vacancies. Here, you'll see the current openings that exist in the board, in the in current committees. Again, I brought this item before the board because you know, it's been a quick learning curve in terms of committees, and I don't want our current new members to fall in the position that I have, where I have current vacancies, right, that need to be filled. And appreciate everyone who has kept their committees full with the individuals from their district. Okay, so this is again just an overview of current vacancies. You'll see that there are some committees that are fully full. They're full. There are some that need a little bit of TLC. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next page. So in preparation for the May work session, you know, I'd like for you to think about these 4 items. It's primarily the structure of the committees. Are they working as intended to be? Do we have the right expertise within these groups? And if so, how do we build on this work? If not, how do we attract well-qualified people who want to serve on these committees, right? Is our existing committee structure based on good governance practices, right? For us, again, in an effort to be, to ensure that, you know, we're on a path towards good governance and continue, and I'm grateful to my colleagues who honor good governance. We also want to make sure that the committees who are underneath us are focused on good governance and not on the day-to-day logistics of the organization from the perspective of like operations, but instead are focused on governing. If the existing committee structure is building on good governance practices, how do we build on it? If not, you know, what areas can we make improvements in, and what alternative structures are possible, if any? And in all of this, broadly, you know, are there potential board or district policy implications? We should be prepared to have those discussions. Is there an opportunity to streamline this work and build board community cohesion? Again, one of my intentions in bringing this item to the board, because we've talked about how we want to inform and build on our community engagement. Well, this is one key area to do that in. All right, I've said a lot. Thank you for following my presentation. I would love to turn it over to colleagues now for discussion, and I see Trustee Williams in the queue. Go ahead, Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks for putting this report together. I think this is super helpful, especially for the new trustees coming onto the board. I did not get this when I got on the board. So it was very confusing. I remember very vividly people asking me, hey, do you want to do this? I remember actually that first year it was a work session where everybody got appointed. And then the last year it was not. So I was very confused on how it was actually supposed to be handled. So I think in 2021 it was a work session, everybody was appointed. 2022, not so much, but I also don't think any of the seats were open. And then in 2023, I don't think it was that way either. So I think this is really helpful. I think that making this go forward, I guess, in the next coming cycles, 2024, 2026, as new board members go, onto the board and come off the board, maybe putting this in a January work session or into the board training that you guys have developed. I think this would actually be really helpful. It would have been helpful for me, but I think this is a really, really good start to a really good practice going forward. So.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. I appreciate your insight. Colleagues, is there any more discussion at this time? Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say that I think that this is a good idea for the intent. And one just general comment I'd like to make that has to do with one of the points that you made is that coming up with, as far as, kind of like a more streamlined process for applications and getting well-qualified people from our community. Because I know a lot of times, like right now, one of the vacancies that I have is on the zoning committee. I have been trying, to get someone for probably about the last 5 or 6 months, and every time I get close, but then explain how many meetings and what it entails, and, I've started going after, I don't want to say going after, inquiring of retired people to see if they have the time, to serve. So I'd like to see something that is kind of, like something that's like a go-to thing. So like, say if Trustee Williams gets asked a question about a particular committee, or I do, that we have that readily available.
What a great idea, Trustee Cavazos. Thank you for that insight. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to echo the sentiments. Thank you for bringing this forward. I do think that's good to know that I definitely did not get this, didn't get this overview as a new trustee, so that feedback is definitely something we should do moving forward because it can be very confusing. I am very fortunate that I have some long-serving committee members, but I recognize that not everybody is in that boat, and I'm willing, I've got some ideas, and I'm definitely ready to come back. Well, not quite, haven't digested it yet, but I will be back in May to throw them all out there.
Thank you for that, Trustee Brooks. I want to give Trustee Guzman and Trustee Zamora a chance to weigh in if they would like to. Not required, but I don't know if you have any comments.
Trustee Zamora, are you going to speak? Because I'll yield to you.
I was just going to say, Trustee Williams had the great idea that we should add this on the onboarding as the new trustee. I really appreciated having that process where we did all the trainings with my fellow trustee, Bustamante Adams, and this can be added and it would be successful, I believe. And that's it.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. My thought is that I also think it should be part of trainings, but I also think that we should be given folks that have shown interest so that we can have quality conversations when it's time to appoint. Because this time around, when I'm appointing, I've had quality conversations with folks to let them know what the committees, their structures, how it works, the time commitment. And it's easier now for me to appoint than it was when I first started as a trustee.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Appreciate your insights as well. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos, I have you in the queue. Go ahead.
Was Trustee Zamora ahead of me? Oh, okay, all right. Thank you, Madam President. I forgot something, but I see that it's in the next item, possibly, that under the appointments outlined in NRS that we don't have NIAA listed there, and then I see that Vegas PBS. I see that both of those are included in 2.02, so we don't have them, though, on these ones. Yeah.
Right.
And they are, and it's kind of like muddy because they're in a slightly different classification, so I'm assuming that's why.
You're absolutely
Okay,
correct,
all right.
Trustee Cavazos,
Good.
yes. And that's exactly why we need to have this conversation, is because there are really three different types of board appointments, right? And yes, fully agree and supportive of this type of information being provided to members when they come on board, maybe even before they come on board. Like this takes a lot of effort and work to get the right people on board in your committees. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, just going along with Trustee Cavazos, and like I was telling her, like those ones, like the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Committee, not our committee. So PBS, not our committee, which is why you don't have them on here. But I do agree that I think that maybe you put that in a third column, like committees that CCSD is a part of, we just don't run them, because we are appointed to them, we still do attend them. I understand where your head's at, though, but it does make sense, because I too, for a moment, was like, oh, and then I looked ahead, I was like, that's right, I forgot, so maybe just going into it, because I do sit on that board as well, and then I would, however, caution the superintendent committees. I wouldn't put those on there, just because I think that can get too muddy, and then not knowing who's going to be on this board in 10 or 12 years, they may look at that and be like, no, I want to be on that board, not knowing or not realizing, or maybe not understanding or not adhering to their own limitations that they are a trustee and not part of the superintendent committees.
That's fair. Thank you, Trustee Williams. This is an action item, but there is no action that's required. I did hear some colleagues talk about streamlining processes and providing additional training to members, but also colleagues who are excited about the conversation in May to bring some ideas, and that's really what our intention is for today's moment and conversation, is that I'd love for us to come back ready to discuss committee structure and streamlining processes, and be prepared to offer some recommendations and take a vote in the month of May during the May work session. So that's a preview to the May work session. Thank you in advance for your patience and grace as I put this item together in a thoughtful manner. I wanted to make sure it wasn't, but it was intentional, and again, appreciate your grace in having this sent to you yesterday. Okay. All right, I think we can move on safely to item 2.02. Colleagues, this is not an action item. Before I fully open it, I want to just thank you in advance. At the last board meeting, at the last work session, we talked about providing opportunities for board members to share board committee quarterly updates. And that is, the intention there is for us to share out what we have been working on, what we are involved in, and really provide information to our colleagues and our community on the good work that's taking place outside of the dais. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. I was gonna go ahead if you're, okay. I sit on the, I apologize, the Debt Management Commission, Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition committees. The last meeting that we had was in January, which was just appointments at that point. I don't know, there's actually been some talks about dissipating that committee entirely, because it is in a sense ineffective, right? There's where I think initially when they first were, and I'm just speaking candidly, I think initially when they were first formed, they had a really good concept of operations, but as they've kind of grown, there's not much to them, because everything that is done by city planning and then also approved by the county commission. And if you've never watched one of those meetings, I don't think they're not televised, but you can read the minutes. It's typically a few city council members, county commission, school board representative, and they're truly just going through a lot of planning items around the city. RTC speaks there quite often, every single time, because most of them are doing the planning around how the city transportation goes. So we'll see if we have a second quarter meeting. Typically it gets pushed off. I don't know, but the budget has been increasingly smaller and smaller every single time I go, and the meetings are increasingly more short every single time I go, and so there has been many talks about just dissipating the entire committee. So that's all I have for that, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Trustee Williams, for that insight and for your service and for that update. Trustee Brooks has a question for you, and maybe Trustee Cavazos does too.
Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Williams, just so that you know, I actually voted to disband that in August 2019. And then I also told the group that I did not think the school board needed to be involved in it, because it was a bunch of municipalities who were talking about things that were not related to students or education and not really related to much. So I was one of the deciding votes to disband them, and then the next meeting, they voted to undo that, and they have been fighting about disbanding ever since. I just wanted to provide you that historical background.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Brooks. I can't agree more with you. I'm pretty sure every single meeting I've sat in on, I've gotten to the point where I'm calling into the meetings because I'm driving all the way down south for about 30 minutes. Commissioner Jones has a really good insight on this, and I don't feel like he actually wants to keep going with these meetings, to be honest with you. But I agree with you. I don't see a point in having a board member for the school district there. The last meeting we spoke about was RTC transportation, more stops to increase transportation. That to me does make sense. It does make, maybe a board member needs to be there. But the meeting previous to all of those were about where they were going to place bushes and what kind of indigenous bushes they were going to place. And I just didn't feel the need to be there as a CCSD member. That didn't make sense to me. But I agree with you. So if that ever comes up to conversation on disbanding them, I will probably end up voting. Maybe. We don't know. Yeah, very mysterious. You guys don't know. We don't know what happens.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. I see Trustee Cavasso maybe has a question or comment for you.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, mine was very brief, and I was going to bring up what Trustee Brooks had brought up, that we had voted to do that before. I did have one little question. I don't know if Trustee Williams said it, and I might have missed it. When was that first put into effect that a trustee member was going to be a part of that committee?
Trustee Brooks?
Do you know?
Are you talking about the regional planning?
Yeah.
It's actually written in the NRS.
Okay. So when there is an argument about against disbanding, what is the rationale for keeping a trustee on there? Is there one overriding thing?
I have a,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in 2019, they talked about how, well, for one, they just allowed me to excuse myself, and I stopped attending because after we voted to disband, and then they voted to undo that. I have enough drama in my life.
I would have to agree with Trustee Brooks. So the board itself, if you go and you watch those meetings, the board itself, it's not drama. It's not, it's not crazy. Everybody goes in there. We start the meeting. We go through the agenda. We talk about items, and then we leave. But we did talk about disbanding it or possibly disbanding it because our budget's getting smaller and smaller. And so there's really no point in having it. And I think what basically alludes to is that in the NRS, there is a section that obviously covers the representatives that are supposed to be on this committee. However, because there are so many different committees that have oversight over the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Commission, there's really no point in having it anymore because there's already too many committees that have the oversight on there. But the only reason why we still have to keep it is because we are legally required to. So if it were to ever come up into legislation where they're like, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of this because there's this and this that covers it, then we could possibly get rid of it. But at this point, we can't vote to disband ourselves because it is covered in the NRS. So it's just like with the Sex Advisory Committee, we are legally required to continue with it. We can't get rid of it if we tried unless it was a form of legislation.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you so much for that extra information. I guess I was just kind of like Trustee Brooks, searching for a way for us to be more effective and maybe, like I think she said, she just excused herself and stopped going. But I was kind of looking for the actual protocol. So thank you for that information.
No, I was just going to say it was formed in 1999. So at that time, not every region had like a planning department. And then since then, the region grew, and then everybody kind of started their own departments, and they don't really share these tasks anymore. So they just kind of outgrew it.
Ideally, it's a moot committee, and there's.
I mean, there's potential there. It's just
Sure.
you have to have a willingness of all parties, and yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that lively discussion. All right. I am going to provide my update since I'm also sharing, I'm the first to share as well with Trustee Williams, our board committee quarterly update. I currently serve on the Council of Great City Schools. I'm a board member of on the Board of Directors. And last month, during the Council of Great City Schools Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C., the board met to have a board meeting. It was a really eye-opening experience. It was my first board meeting with the council. And those of us who attended, there was a good crew of team members, colleagues who were able to attend this time. The legislative conference, it is very enlightening and encouraging, inspiring. The Council of Great City Schools is made up of 73 individual urban school districts across the country, and their focus is on student outcomes. I learned about the different pieces of the operation of this organization, including how long it's been around for since the 70s. They have done some tremendous work around research, communication, like elevating the voices of urban school districts and their needs like ours. They've worked on legislation on the federal level. They have, did I mention, conducted research as well that, again, has elevated the work of school districts. They have task force on achievement and professional development, a task force on English language learning and bilingual education, the task force on Black and Latino young men and boys. There was a presentation on the work that's being done there, and the task force on Black and Latina young women and girls also took place. I think the one that I found most fascinating was the conversation at the national level around the task force of Black and young men and boys. The council is really dedicated to improving student outcomes, and we know nationally, we heard it recently at one of our board meetings, we are struggling. Actually, that was another meeting I was a part of, but our Black boys and Latino boys are struggling the most academically, mental health, suspension rates, and it's hard to describe exactly the type of dialogue that took place, but I can tell you that there's an urgency at the council's level to elevate this issue. There is some great conversations that are knowledge sharing that's happening across school districts, and I often sometimes when I look at our data and I think I'm grateful that we are transparent with our data, and that we are continuing to find ways to strengthen our numbers across the board, which is something that hasn't been done in the school district before. So I'm really proud of the work that we're doing to move the needle forward. There are school districts across the country who are also facing very, very similar challenges that we are, and it was both encouraging but also really, really sad, because sad is the most professional word I have for you right now. It hurt my heart. And generally, I'm really proud of the work that the council is doing. There's just, I think we're all trying to row in the same direction, and it's going to take all of us to lift up the state of education across the country. The council reminded me that there is a lot of work to do. So, great first meeting. Also, colleagues, please be prepared for the conference, the actual national conference that's taking place in San Diego this year. So I'm hoping that all of you have saved the date for that event. That's all I have. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, no questions. That is great. All right, colleagues, I am going to move on to item colleagues, in the air, Trustee Zamora and Trustee Guzman, do you have any questions at this time for either Trustee Williams or I?
Not at this time.
I don't either. Thank you for asking.
Great, thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on to item 3.01. The upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees is here in the boardroom on April 13th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Okay. Moving on to item 4.01, public comment on items not listed on as action items on the agenda. If anybody in the audience would like to provide public comment, they must submit a yellow public speaker card. Doesn't look like we have any public comment. Both has been submitted in advance or from our audience today. So I'm asking our colleagues to move on to 5.5, adjournment. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
I
Trustee.
second.
Oh. All right, was that Trustee Zamora?
No, it was Trustee Guzman.
Oh, okay, thank you, Trustee Guzman. All right, we have a motion on the floor, colleagues, by Trustee Williams and a second by Trustee Guzman. Can you please cast your vote? Trustee Zamora?
Yay.
Okay, and Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Okay, colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you for your time this evening. It is 5:24 p.m. The meeting has adjourned.